Well, look at that. We have a whole lodge joining us. That's great. Hello, brothers. We'll be starting right now. On behalf of the Grand Lodge of Indiana, it's my honor to be here representing the Dwight L. Smith Lodge of Research. This is the fourth running of this online event where we bring you 3 Masonic speakers on 3 separate topics in just an hour's time. Our Grand Junior Warden, that's not right. Our Senior Grand Warden, Randy Seipel, will join us from a lodge for his presentation, Lodge in a Box. Then our Junior Grand Warden, John Bridegroom, will talk about rethinking proficiency. And then Worshipful Brother John Clark of Converse Lodge will present on the Masonic Beehive. Please keep your microphones muted and govern yourselves accordingly throughout. If you aren't presentable, you may wish to keep your camera off. But before we start, I'd like to extend warm wishes and a hearty welcome on behalf of our newly installed Most Worshipful Grand Master, Gary E. Brinley. We'll begin with a recorded message of the Grand Master, which includes a few important updates and was recorded on May 16th during the annual communication of our Grand Lodge.
So, brother, ladies, and guests, I'm truly humbled and honored to be your 172nd Grand Master for the state of Indiana. I'll do my best to serve you in this coming year. For the past 6 years, I've worked Junior Past Grand Master with, as well as Progressive Lodge, Grand Lodge officers that have gone before.
James, there's no sound to the video.
Bear with me, brothers. Let's try this one more time.
It started with sound and then it just stopped.
State of Indiana. I'll do my best to serve you in this coming year.
How's that?
For the past 6 years, I've worked with our Junior Past Grand Master, Richard L. Lentz, as well as the Progressive Lodge, Grand Lodge officers that have gone before me, and those who populate the chairs today. And over that time, we've worked in putting together an organizational structure that can support and help our lodges. This effort's resulted in an announcement that we made in February that we're combining the district educators, membership liaisons, and ritual instructors into a single committee, entitling them Lodge Liaisons. Generally, each of these brothers are being assigned 3 to 8 lodges for them to shepherd and move along and help. The goal is for them to carry the Grand Master's message to those lodges, provide those lodges with assistance in the areas of membership acquisition, membership development, membership retention. The initial feedback we've received from those liaisons that have already gone out and visited lodges is that they are being warmly welcomed. A number of the lodges are appreciative of what we're doing in trying to give them kind of some help and assistance in trying to work their way forward. Worshipful Masters, if you haven't received a visit from your lodge liaison yet, should be coming. Please reach out to him and welcome him with open arms. He's just there to listen, to help, and help you move your lodge forward. Our goals for 2023-2024 are focused on new membership and new Master Masons. The goal is membership acquisition. The membership in Grand Lodge of Indiana has been declining for over 60 years. In the past 18 years, membership has gone from 75,845 at the end of 2004 to 40,000 780 at the end of 2022. If we don't change the trajectory of our membership, we will be below 40,000 members at the end of 2023. In 2022, we only raised 719 new Master Masons, a number below our 2% average over the past 17 years. Using our past 18 years as history as a guide, if we don't change and increase the number of new Master Masons we are raising, our membership numbers in 20 years will be down in the mid to low teens. Brethren, this is a call to action. Our challenge for 2023 is for every Master Mason to sign at least one petition. We will work as Grand Lodge officers to get this message out to our craft through the Grand Lodge communication channels. However, worshipful Masters, it is up to you to help spread the word within your lodge. Make announcements within your lodge of the challenge. Put this challenge in your lodge communications. Do everything you can to get your lodge excited to meet this challenge. Then be ready to follow through on making new Master Masons. Our second goal is new member proficiency. Our new members are joining for the camaraderie, the fellowship, personal growth, search for light, and community involvement. Nowhere in any of these ideas is the item of becoming a ritualist or joining a memorization club. We need to make every effort to move these new candidates through the degrees to help them become better men and our lodges stronger. These new members will help provide your lodge with new energy and a renewed sense of purpose. Our third goal is onboarding, engagement, re-engagement. Kind of a little bit of a carryover from what we've been doing for the last year, as started by Past Grand Master Lentz. That's kind of a different commentary there, Past Grand Master, isn't it? So we've been talking about engagement, re-engagement, getting involved in the community, engaging your members. You know, we need to continue those efforts. We also want to add to those efforts onboarding of our new Master Masons. We need to make certain that after they get their Master Mason degree, we continue to invite them back to our meetings and events. We need to continue to mentor these new Master Masons so they get and stay connected to your lodge. We may even want to get them to take small parts within our lodge, either ritual or otherwise. Could be as simple as helping with dinner. You know, maybe they cook something for dinner, or they clean the tables and wash the dishes. Just things to get them there so that they have a purpose and a reason to be there. So, brethren, I'm looking forward to meeting many of you. I've met many of you over my travels over the last 6 years. I believe that if we work together, we can achieve much. We need to focus on membership acquisition, development, and retention. While the Grand Lodge can promote these ideas, it is up to you to put them into action. I look forward to seeing the results of our efforts. Thank you.
Thank you very much to our Grand Master for that update. My name is James Buckhorn. I'm a past master of Pentalpha Lodge number 564 in Indianapolis, and the senior warden of the Dwight L. Smith Lodge of Research, who is presenting this edition of Ramblings of a Traveling Man for our Grand Lodge. Tonight, I'll play the role of our host and MC. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce our right worshipful brother, Randy Seipel.
Good evening, brother, and I hope you can hear me. Can you hear me, James?
Yes, we can hear you.
Well, it's great to be here. I'll let you know that I am sitting in a very rural community in northern Putnam County, Roachdale, Indiana, at one of Indiana's smallest Masonic lodges, raising their first Master Mason in probably the last 4 years. So I'm getting ready to go back up and assist them with the lectures here in a little bit. So it's and hope you're all doing well. And I'm here to talk to you about Lodge in a Box. And I believe James is going to utilize my PowerPoint and right now because the reception's not very good. But James, when you're ready with the slides, I'll just kind of wing it. You just do your best to follow along. If you could approve of that, I'd appreciate it.
No problem, and I'm ready.
All righty. Well, the program is Lodge in a Box. Brethren, our ancient brethren met on a high hill and a low dell, the better to keep off the approach of Cowans or eavesdroppers. Back in the 1920s, the fraternity was growing by leaps and bounds, and we were building great, big, large, beautiful Masonic structures, a lot of which were used to house and have a place for the Knights Templar to meet and to do their floor work. Scattered across the state of Indiana are very many large
Randy, we lost you there for a while and now you're muted.
Okay, am I back?
You're back.
Okay, sorry about that. So we've got numerous large Masonic buildings that were built in the 1920s to house larger lodges and the Knights Templar to utilize their floor work that now are in disrepair, that are very expensive to do upkeep on, and are just financially crippling a lot of our lodges. Lodge in a Box, we hope, is going to be a solution to lodges that are struggling to maintain.
Randy, we lost you again.
Okay, I think I'm back on. Sorry about that, brothers. So Lodge in a Box is simply a program that you can use to alleviate yourself from the pressures of paying bills and paying for insurance that you no longer need, and open you up financially to be able to actually go out and practice the art of Freemasonry. We've had a couple lodges. I think past Grand Master Roger Van Gordon is on the call, and his lodge has recently went to the Lodge in a Box program. They sold a very old building that was unfortunately in disrepair. They found themselves in a position that with fewer members and fewer active members, they were unable to maintain the building in the nature that it was needed to be maintained. And so they have moved to the Rainbow Girls Camp in northern Shelby County, where they have an arrangement with them to have their stated meeting and degree work scheduled to go there. They've got all their paraphernalia, their altar, their Bible, all their stations and storage. And when it's time for lodge, the brothers get together, set up the lodge in the common lodge room, and they open up lodge and they do Freemasonry. And I think past Grand Master Van Gordon will be the first to tell you that that has opened up many opportunities and excitement for them when they've alleviated themselves from the pressure of paying electric bills, gas bills, mowing, repair, maintenance, and insurance. In many respects, it doesn't matter where a brother is raised. It matters on how the degree work is conducted and the message is conveyed. You're no less a master mason being raised in the common room of a volunteer fire department or a training room or in a community building or in the basement of a church than you are if you were raised in the Scottish Rite Cathedral. Aesthetically, it might be more beautiful, but the beauty is in the brotherhood and the degree work. Lodge in a Box is also a great program we're wanting to push for creating a new lodge. Oftentimes, when a lodge wants to start, the first thing they have to figure out is where to meet and how are they going to afford it. Every small community in the state of Indiana, and certainly every large community, has numerous options for buildings that we can access for our stated meetings and for degree work. Like I said, most of these communities, the one I'm sitting in, has a very nice volunteer fire department built with government grant funds, that has a common room, a training room that they use, that arrangements can be made with the organization at a very low cost to hold your stated meetings. And then again, to hold degree work. You can always get a dispensation to move your charter to a larger lodge in the area if you want to do the degree work in a lodge room setting. You can also utilize the Schofield House, the Indianapolis Masonic Temple, the Scottish Rite, or various other Masonic venues to do degree work. But again, the importance of Freemasonry and the importance of keeping us, as we've been saying, engaged is in the actual art of Freemasonry and the getting together and to taking care of our brothers, into doing ritual work and practicing on ritual. More importantly, practicing on acting as brothers and living as brothers. Oftentimes we see brothers that get into financial problems because of loss of jobs or health.
Brother, we lost you there.
They have a relief fund of $150, $200, and that's all they can muster. Think of the financial abilities you would have to help your brother if you were no longer paying thousands of dollars in insurance and in utility bills and upkeep and in maintenance. And when a brother is in need, you could actually help them and help pay their mortgage payment for a couple months, make a car payment, go build a handicap accessible ramp for them. The possibilities are endless when you look at Lodge in a Box. I have an altar that's been designed that you literally can store every bit of regalia inside and on the outside of the altar, your charter, your Bible, your gavel.
Brother, we lost you there.
Everything you need to conduct the lodge. It's a simple process. For a lodge wants to go to a box to free themselves of their building, but still be a living, viable lodge, you would need to speak with the supervisory board and have them approve the location that you're moving to, and then you would do a bylaws change for the new location and get approval from master for decision. Like I said, we've got probably 7 lodges currently utilizing the Lodge in a Box. As I said before, Farmers Lodge, past Grandmaster Van Gordon's Lodge, Noble.
We lost you there, brother.
Your shrine. I'm back on, I think. Noble Lodge that meets at Murat Shrine in Indianapolis. Double Eagle Lodge that meets at the Scottish Rite Cathedral. Boone Lodge 9 meets and very successfully meeting and raising Master Masons at their American Legion in Boone County. So there's many options out there that you can do to utilize Lodge in a Box. I think I pretty well covered everything on the slides, but I'm very excited about this program. It's a concept that I've been thinking about a lot. We love our buildings, but I personally love Freemasonry more. It's a great advantage to lodges that are struggling financially. And I personally would rather see more small lodges survive, because when you look at consolidation, A lot of times we bring in lodges and consolidations. That lodge, their membership is already disengaged, and it's hard to get them excited about coming to a new lodge in a new location 15 or 20 miles away from them. So anything we can do to keep a lodge alive and active and viable in their community and doing things for their community and their brothers, to me, is of utmost importance. It's not about the building, it's about Freemasonry. So with that, I'm going to wrap it up. If anyone has any questions or
Brothers, if you have any
my
questions, if you could,
location,
I'm sorry, they're right, worshipful. I was just saying, if you have any questions, you could use the hand raise emoji
No,
or
I
type them in the chat if you'd like.
apologize, brethren, for my location. Oh, it's annoying.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Right Worshipful. I'm not seeing any questions at this time. Thank you for sharing with us, and enjoy lodge tonight.
Okay, going back to lodge again, brother. Sorry for the difficulty of my location and my reception, but everyone have a great night and take care.
James, there is one question in the chat on how can an individual get a copy of the PowerPoint. I'm sure that our Grand Senior Warden would be happy to send that along. If you don't have Randy's contact information, he's pretty easy to find, but I'm sure that he's willing to make that slide presentation available to anybody who wants it.
That's right. And I see that question now from Robert.
Absolutely.
Hogan. Randy, I'll get his email
Absolutely.
address.
And we're eventually okay. And we're eventually going to put that on the lodge portal. But yeah, give me his email address. I'll be glad to share it. And if anyone would like me to come to their lodge and actually do the
It's better in person, clearly. I will say that the Lodge in the Box program, I know it's a little tough to kind of make it out with the choppiness of what it was, but it's a great program, and it actually it's a great example of seeing a need and addressing it directly. And Randy's done a really good job of putting that program together. He's been all over the state of Indiana, so he's seen just about every presentation of Freemasonry that we have, whether it's a big lodge, small lodge, and he's worked in the Grand Lodge office for a long time. So he, while he was doing that, he got to see what a lot of the struggles were with our lodges, and the Lodge in the Box just sort of harkens back to a time when we weren't. It harkens back to a time pre-building these big, magnificent buildings, when we didn't necessarily concern ourselves with building that giant building on the town square. And we met at any common meeting place in the town and just brought the implements with us. And so it's a pretty good program that he's got put together there, and I think he's done a nice job with it. So.
I agree. With that, John, are you ready to start your presentation?
Oh yeah.
All right. Well, wonderful. Brethren, it's my pleasure to introduce you to Right Worshipful Brother John Bridegroom. Right Worshipful, take it away.
Okay. Oh, that's let me maybe I should start at the first slide, not the last slide. That'd be helpful. Technology is our friend when it works, and when it doesn't, well, it is what it is. So first of all, I really appreciate all you brethren signing on tonight. I know we've all got busy lives and lots of activities within the fraternity. I know there's several events going on tonight that I'm sure have impacted the attendance. But our goal is to make sure that these things are available on video after the fact. So you might be able to go back and revisit anything that you find particularly interesting. But tonight, I'm going to talk a little bit about proficiency and its role in Indiana Freemasonry. And when we speak of proficiency, what I mean is whatever method that you use to determine if a candidate is ready to proceed to the next degree. And this can take many forms, but oftentimes it's the catechism or the questions and answers that lodges require candidates to memorize before they can proceed to the next degree. And in Indiana's case, it's those small A, B, and C books that the Grand Lodge used to send out. But the question is, what does Grand Lodge actually require as proficiency for a candidate? Well, this is what the Blue Book says. Our Blue Book of Masonic Law says that what is required to progress a candidate to the next degree is that he must attain proficiency. And that means that every candidate for advancement and the newly raised Master Masons must have a perfect knowledge of all the steps, due guards, signs, tokens, and words. That's it. Step, grip, word, signs. But despite this being the only requirement that from a Grand Lodge perspective, we wish that the lodges would use, there still is this culture that persists across Indiana that is requiring the candidates to memorize the catechism or the questions and answers before they can move on to their next degree. And I get it. You know, I had to do it. I'm sure that, most of the guys on this call probably had to do it. But this also creates an environment where if one guy doesn't quite learn the catechism as well as the other guy, that maybe he feels like he's less of a Mason, or if he doesn't want to do it at all, it's looked at like he's trying to take a shortcut. And by God, there's going to be no shortcuts in Freemasonry under my watch. But the truth of the matter is that no one joins Freemasonry to become a ritualist. And you heard our Grand Master say that in his opening comments. But how could they? They don't even know what the ritual is yet before they join. But perhaps the point is that Freemasonry is not a memorization club, and nor should we relegate it to such a low status. What we actually are is a system of morality that gives good men the tools to improve themselves. That's why they come to us. That's why men knock at the door of Freemasonry. It's because they believe that within our teachings are something that will improve them, make them better men. And look, I get it. Many of you probably had to learn the catechism, and many of you that are on the call today can probably still recite it. I know I had to do it, and if pressed, I could probably pull it off. But however, I would wager a bet that there's probably a few of you on this call that have probably forgotten it as well. And, look, if I came to James and I found out that he no longer knew the questions and answers by heart, would that make him any less of a Master Mason today? Of course not. Because deep down, we know that the quality of a Master Mason is not determined by his ability to memorize. Now, don't get me wrong. I think the catechism has a lot to offer. It teaches very important lessons, and you can learn a lot from it. But perhaps it's better served as a merit-based system where Master Masons who want to learn it can be rewarded with a proficiency card or a certificate. Perhaps it's better that the brother learn these lessons over time by visiting the lodge and being active. Let those who are inclined to learn those things have the option to do so, but it shouldn't be tied to the candidate's advancement in the degrees of Freemasonry. There are many out there that think that the catechism is some sort of ancient landmark that's been around since the beginning. But brethren, that simply is not the case. The catechism as a system of proficiency in other words, determining when a brother can advance, is fairly recent in Masonic history. It appears as if it was instituted during the golden age of Freemasonry, when we were at our highest numbers and men were clamoring at our doors. We needed some sort of way to slow down the process, to weed out those who were really serious about joining. And so it would seem that the catechism as a system of proficiency was actually devised as a roadblock when we had too many men who were trying to join. Now, brethren, if you saw our Grand Master's talk about our numbers, the membership trends, and you heard his presentation on the state of membership in Indiana, then you know that the last thing that we need right now are intentional roadblocks. Too often we see brethren who are good men who do not progress past their entered apprentice degree due to the catechism. I've heard on many occasions when men would reject joining once they found out that they had to memorize something. I got told a particular story at one of our area conferences where there was a gentleman who was really interested in joining Freemasonry. He was an animal surgeon, very prominent in the community, and he went through his EA degree and he just did not have time to sit down and memorize the catechism for the lodge. And so he never progressed past his entered apprentice degree. And what a shame it is to lose a man of that caliber, someone who's actually an influential member of your community and who is clearly the standards of a good man that we would want in the craft, all because he didn't have time to memorize the questions and answers. So I think that we need to really just get out of our own way and get out of the way of good men joining Freemasonry. So I think it's time that we rethink proficiency in our lodges. Perhaps we go back to actually using what the Grand Lodge requires: step, grip, word, and signs, and we get these good men through the degrees and into the craft, and then we teach them what Freemasonry is all about. So, let's get out of our own way and let's return to making good men Freemasons. There you go.
Thank you very much, Right Worshipful. Does anyone have any questions? I'll give you a minute or so to navigate your way to the chat window and pop those in.
I will let you guys know I did a little digging when I was sort of preparing this for our Grand Master, and went through a large swath of old proceedings of the Grand Lodge. And it's very interesting that in the late 1800s, early 1900s, there is some verbiage that says that they need to be proficient in the preceding degree, but it's described as just being a general working knowledge of the degree that you went through, and it was left to the individual lodge members and the worshipful master to decide what that general working knowledge is. But there was lots of discussion at that time that lodges weren't requiring it at all. It was a very common practice across Indiana that they weren't really requiring any sort of proficiency going through the degrees. And then as we get into like the late 1930s to 1940s, you start seeing in all the surrounding states, because in our proceedings, we have reports that used to get turned in from the surrounding states. You start to see them piecing in little pieces of legislation, particularly about the Master Mason degree, where they were starting to require a time frame for someone to be proficient at the Master Mason degree. In other words, within a month, you have to prove that you're proficient with a general working knowledge of the degree. And then somewhere around the mid 40s, we start to see language getting introduced, which I'm guessing is probably right around or after World War II, where the catechism or a more specific version of that proficiency starts to come in. So it's interesting to watch that sort of evolution over time. But
We have a couple
I
of
see-
questions. Yep.
yeah, I see
Go
a
ahead,
handful of
sorry.
questions. So I have not. One gentleman asked if I've looked at how surrounding states do proficiency, like perhaps in Michigan, he mentioned. I am not intimately familiar with how, say, Michigan does it. I do know that proficiency as a reward system does exist in several jurisdictions. Texas comes to mind, where they have like you can earn what they call A, B, and C certificates. And that's based on the level of knowledge you have of the work. And I think like a level A certificate is you have to be able to recite all of the work verbatim, not just questions and answers, not just opening, closing, like the whole degree. And I know there are several jurisdictions that do that sort of thing, but as far as tying it to advancement in the degrees, I confess I'm not familiar. There are some Ohio guys on here. They might be able to chime in and let us know. So Michael Watson had asked why the emphasis on catechism when the minimum proficiency from the Grand Lodge of Step, Grip, and Word. And I think it's literally just a holdover from that era when it became ingrained that we needed to use this catechism as a way to prove proficiency. Even to the point where in Indiana, it doesn't make a lot of sense because that lecture that is the questions and answers is presented completely differently in the ritual than in the A, B, and C books that we have. But Grand Lodge for a while now has clarified that all they require is step, grip, and word, and the do guard, but they haven't, but it just hasn't permeated into the lodges. They are sticking by their proficiency requirements. And of course, by God, I did it my year. They have to do it their year kind of thing. That's what it seems like to me. So I see somebody said that using it as a reward system could be good. Let's see. So the jurisdictions all vary. Grant Smith had asked, as a young master mason who hasn't done a lot of traveling, can you tell me how it works when you don't know the catechisms, especially in foreign jurisdictions? The foreign jurisdictions generally don't use the catechism as a way to test you. They may just ask you a set of random questions about the degrees that you would then have to answer, or they may have in their particular jurisdiction some specific questions that the lodges are told to ask when a foreigner visits. And then there's what's called the what's it called? It's like the Tyler's obligation or something to that effect. It's like basically an obligation that you would take in front of their Tyler to swear that you're a master mason after they've questioned you a little bit. And that's generally how that works.
The Tyler's oath.
Tyler's oath. Thank you. So Michael said Ohio has 3 different types of proficiency, each at the choice of the candidate. And that is something that was actually suggested too, was leave this up as an option to the candidate. He can either prove his proficiency with the catechism or he could just proceed. And you'd be surprised how many people actually opt to do that. But the interesting thing about that is it changes it from being a lodge requirement where they're looking at you and scrutinizing you to being a voluntary thing that you're doing that you're then proud to accomplish. So I think giving it as an option to the candidate is a really good maybe way to do that if the lodge wanted to stick with it. So Robert said in New York, generally speaking, lodges require the Q&As be memorized. He's been trying to work against it. What if a man or a brother has a stroke? That's a great example. And I actually had a situation where we had a dyslexic brother join the lodge. And, one of the things that I kind of usually when I give this talk at our area conferences, I mentioned that circumstance happened in my lodge. And we had this brother join and he was dyslexic. And so he really had to learn it mouth to ear and he never really could get it quite right. And I kind of realized that the reason maybe that wisdom is the characteristic assigned to the worshipful master is because he should have the wisdom to look at a candidate and say, is he giving his best? Is he doing his all? That's all we're really wanting in this sort of proficiency thing is that we know that he can, what he's capable of, and is he giving the best? And then the worshipful master in his wisdom says he's proficient. It would be foolish to take a guy who had a stroke or was dyslexic and say, you can't be a master mason because you are incapable of memorizing this little book. but the worshipful master can look at him and say, I recognize what you're doing is the best that you can do, and that's all we require, you know. Mel said, brothers, in Texas, the ability to recite the catechism is a requirement to advance between the degrees. This is separate from the A, B, and C certificates, which also require knowledge of the lectures. That's a good point. Yeah. And there's a link in the chat if you guys want to check it out, that James put up there, that is Principles of Proficiency. If you want to read about Ohio's program, he said that's from the Midwest Conference of Masonic Education. And then Bob said, can the points on the ritualist program be revised so the person can get their ritualist pin by learning the catechism? It would be a good way to reward memorization. Currently, the way the points are structured, an additional 45 points are needed to receive a pin. I think that's a great place to start. I think, Bob, you and I talked about that a little bit at an area conference, but I do think that that's probably a great place to start in Indiana, is to include it or make it the baseline for the base level of our ritualist pin recognition. So, and then a gentleman said, as a past master, I know that having memorized the Q&A helped me tremendously in being able to confer the degrees. In a time when fewer members are able to conduct the work, what do you think will happen if this practice is eliminated? Well, I think that, I don't know that I would say that I think there will be a direct correlation. One thing that is I find interesting, we all know that our lodges are struggling, and we know that we need people to perform the ritual, but I don't know that you can convince somebody to perform the ritual by forcing them to memorize the catechism. The guys who are attracted to that sort of thing and are capable of that sort of thing, I think will be drawn to it. But you know, most lodges, you got a 20%, if not a 10% participation rate. And all of those guys probably had to go through some level of proficiency, and they're still not coming back. And I don't take that wrong. I'm not faulting them, because in the Master Mason degree, in the lecture, I believe it's in the Master Mason degree, we tell them that although your attendance at our meetings is earnestly solicited, all that's necessary for you to maintain your membership is that you pay your dues in a timely manner and you live an upright life. And so we tell them right in the Master Mason degree that they don't have to come back. They can go and live a good life and be a Master Mason, and to us, that's enough. And so it's a bit of a contradiction to me to then, you know, judge them on not coming back or judge them on not becoming ritualists or becoming officers. But I mean, I agree with you. It helped me learn the work, and I progressed into being an officer. But I think I probably would have been drawn to that either way, because it was the kind of thing I was interested in, and I was so impressed by the presentation that was given to me by my brothers. I wanted to perform that to those who came after me. So, but that's just one opinion. Believe me, there are varied opinions on this.
Thank you, Right Worshipful. I did want to check if our next presenter was ready. Worshipful Brother Clark, are you able to present, or do you need a couple more minutes?
I am ready to go.
All right. Well, then I will just say
Wonderful.
thank you,
Thank
brother,
you very
for
much,
listening.
Right Worshipful Brother Bridegroom.
Yep.
Really appreciated your presentation. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce Worshipful Brother John Clark of Converse Lodge. He's a beekeeper, and he's going to talk to us about beekeeping and masonry. Brother,
Good evening,
take it
everybody.
away.
Good evening, everyone. First of all, I want to start off saying that I'm honored and humbled to be asked to give this presentation. You have to forgive my attire and appearance. I just came back from the bee yards. That's why I was late logging on. So I'm still suited up. I don't know if you can see that in the image or not, but without further ado, we will get started. So I need to share my screen, correct? And we'll go with...
Right, you should have permissions to do that. You are coming
James,
through a
you see that?
little robot. Yes, I see that. You are a little robot-like. I don't know if there's anything you can do about that. Sounds a little compressed.
I may possibly turn off my video. Would that help? That'd be...
It might.
Does
I'm
that
not
sound
sure if
better?
it would in your situation.
Does that sound
You're
better,
good right
James?
now. You do
Okay.
sound
And you
good
can
right now,
see-
brother.
And you can see the presentation, correct?
Yes, I can see the first slide.
All right, we'll go ahead and get started. So my name is John Clark, Past Master Converse 601, 601. I live in the big town of Swayze, Indiana. If anybody has ever heard of Swayze or been through Swayze, but besides all my other jobs and professions, I am a beekeeper. I've been a beekeeper now for approximately 14 years. We do a lot of different work besides just making honey. A lot of hard effort goes into there. We do swarm removals. So there you can see a bee swarm in that small bush. That was one of the easiest swarm removals I've ever done. Sometimes we get called out by industries, companies where they have swarms on their gates, fences. Sometimes we will engage in cutouts. So this is a cutout from a live tree that you see on the left that we did last spring. And that colony is still surviving well. And on the right, you can see a cutout that we were doing from somebody's attic over their garage. We're actually having to do a bee vac. We suck the bees out through a vacuum and they go into the hive that way. Of course, we do engage in honey cells. There's my wife and oldest daughter there to the left, and you can see some of our product to the right. My youngest son there on the left is helping with the extraction of the honey. Again, an awful lot of work goes into getting the honey. It's not just simply turning on a tap and expecting you to get a large quantity of honey. You actually have to go into the hive. You have to work the hive is what we call it. And there on the right is my mentor that was showing me initially how he extracts the honey. And so he was teaching me and my son in terms of how the best way to go about that. I do have a fledgling YouTube page, which YouTube will come up here in another conversation, which I hope you will all enjoy. But that's kind of was the impetus of this presentation. So if you just type in Clark's Bees, you'll come into my channel, and a lot of those are just, some of them shorter videos, some of them longer videos, but they all center around my passion for bees. And so without further ado, I'm going to give you a little bee trivia here. You can see some of the answers up top, but I think it's important to know a little bit about bees. They are one of the most fascinating creatures that I think God created. It's an unbelievable species. Did you know that a bee can fly around 15 miles per hour? Bees fly 55,000 miles to bring us 1 pound of honey. During her life, a single bee will gather about 1/12 of 1 teaspoon of honey. Bees must go to 2 million flowers in order to get 1 pound of honey. Bees stroke their wings 11,400 times per minute. And it takes approximately 3,500 bees weigh 1 pound. So when we talk about a pound of bees, that's about 3,500 bees in a single pound. Honey bees make up 80% of all pollinators. So you've all probably heard by now, we have a pollination crisis in the United States. Everybody wants to save the honeybee, actually worldwide. But honeybees make up about 80% of all pollinators. There are other pollinators out there, but honeybees do 80% of that work. The queen honeybee, and we'll talk about her in a second, lays around 1,500 eggs per day. And as far as I know, and the only thing I could ever tell, the honeybee, excuse me, is the only insect that produces food eaten by man. Now, I understand that there are insects that we will consume as humans, but they're the only insect that actually produces a food product that is consumed by man. A queen, when she goes out on her mating flight, she will mate up with up to 17 different drones on a 2-day period, 1 to 2 days of mating, and then she'll fly back into that hive. And typically, unless they swarm, she will remain in that hive the rest of her life, laying those 1,500 eggs that we already discussed. So what are the different types of bees that we have? Honeybees. Who lives in a honeybee hive? Well, you've got really 3 different types. You've got worker bees, you have drones, and you have the queen bee. Generally speaking, as a rule of thumb, there's 1 queen bee per hive. Now you can have many worker bees, and you can have many drones. The drones are the males. The worker bees are all female. And drones, just so you're aware, do not have a stinger. So if you see a big fat honeybee, it's probably a drone. And if so, that means you can pick that drone up and let them crawl all over you. There's no reason to be afraid. They have no stinger. Here's a little better image. The way to tell the difference between the queen and the worker bees, the queen will have an elongated body. So you can see her in the middle. She's got that elongated abdomen. That's where all the eggs are, where she's laying her eggs. The worker bees are smaller than the queen. So easy to tell the difference between those two. And the drones are just larger, fatter bees. So that's pretty easy to identify the drones as well. Bees make up what's called a colony. Now, what you see here, this is a differentiation in terms. What you see here are the hive boxes. The hive is the building where the colony lives. The hive could be a tree. The hive could be an attic. But the colony lives in a hive. The hive is a physical structure. The colony are the group of bees that reside in that structure. Worker honeybees will have different jobs according to their age. Now, the drones, their sole job is to mate the queen. Once the drones mate the queen, they actually die during that process. So we won't go into details there, but just so you know, once the drone breeds the queen, mates the queen, the drone dies. So you have remaining, then you have the queen bee and the worker bees. Queen bee, from day one, after she gets mated, she has her job to do, and her job's to lay eggs. The worker bees will all have different jobs according to their age. So from days 1 to 2, they have the job to clean the cells, and they start with the ones they were born in. And they also keep the other brood warm, the other eggs, the other larvae, they keep them warm. Days 3 to 5, their job is to feed older larvae. They're kind of nurse bees, we call them. From 6 to 11, they have the responsibility to feed the youngest larvae. Days 12 through 17, they're producing wax, they're carrying food, they're building combs, and they have undertaker duties. So as the older bees, which in the summertime would be about 40 or 45 days, as those bees die, these undertaker bees then help carry out the remains of those bees and keep the hive clean. Days 18 to 21, they're protecting the hive entrance. They have guard duty. And from days 22 to the end of their life, they will fly from the hive and collect pollen, nectar, water. Some of those bees may become what we call robber bees, where they're actually going into other hives and stealing the honey that they've already collected, or the pollen, the nectar that they've already collected. But I got to thinking about this. Worker bees have various jobs based on their age and based on their maturity, based on their experience. And I thought about that for a second. I thought, how do we compare that with our lodges? Well, typically, you go through the process of EA, FC, and Master Mason, of course, but most people don't start out. Excuse me. Excuse me. Most Masons don't start out in a role of secretary or treasurer. You work up there. You may start out in guard duty as a tiler, and then you advance from there, or a steward or a deacon. But you usually don't just go through your Master Mason degree, and the next thing you know, you're the worshipful master. There's a progress there. You're a chain where you go up in stage, you go up in maturity, you go up in knowledge and wisdom, and eventually you take on greater and greater roles in your lodge. But the lodge itself operates very similar in nature to a colony. When we talk about the colony of bees, somebody gave me this illustration once upon a time, and I found it fascinating and very true. The colony, when we talk about a colony of bees, we can't think of bees as individuals. I'm a person, you're a person. And so we naturally think that, that's a bee, that's a bee. That's not how bees think. A bee would consider themselves part of a cell, part of one organism, one group. Now, some cells are healthy, some can be diseased. Some bees are at the end of their life, and some bees are at the start of their life, but they all operate and function as one unit. They're part of one living, breathing organism. The lodge, by the way, used to be called, in antiquity, days gone by, the hive of Freemasons. So we shouldn't think of Masons as individuals. I'm a brother, you're a brother. Okay, we're all brothers of one lodge. Some brothers are healthy, Some brothers can be diseased. Some brothers have the capacity, as John said, to memorize the catechism. Some brothers don't have that capacity, but we're all part of one living, breathing organism, the lodge. And I think that's one of the reasons why in days of antiquity, we were called a hive of Freemasons before the lodge term was regularly utilized. The hive has always been, as far as I can tell, a symbol of Freemasonry. Many of you will recognize that gentleman there on the right. If you look closely at George Washington's apron that was created for him by Madame de Lafayette, you'll notice the beehive at the very top of the apron on the left. Now, the hive that you see there is not the hive that's typically used by most American beekeepers today. We typically will use what's called the Langstroth hive, but the hive that's usually associated with Freemasonry is the skep, and the skep is a little bit clearer on the next image. What I did is just try to go through and find Masonic beehive emblems, symbols that we've utilized. It's very easily to see there on the left, you have the skep. That's the traditional hive that people used dating back to certainly King Solomon's temple, if not before. That's the skep. You see another image there on the right. A few more images that I pulled off. You get the skep there and several Masonic symbols. Even in stained glass, it would appear. I believe that was the chapel over in Scotland that we see there on the right. And back in 2019 and 2020, the Grand Master of Mississippi, that was his pen. He had the skep on it as well. So the beehive pops up routinely as we look through our history of Masonry. In the early 19th century lecture, the master's degree, they said this: the beehive is an emblem of industry and recommends the practice of that virtue to all created beings, from the highest seraph in the heavens to the lowest reptile of the dust. It teaches us that as we come into the world rational and intelligent beings, so we should ever be industrious ones, never sitting down contented while our fellow creatures around us are in want, especially when it is in our power to relieve them without inconvenience to ourselves. I don't know when the beehive was first mentioned, but we do know there's an expose printed in Ireland dating 1724, where they're already using the beehive as a symbol of Masonry. As Masons, we must imitate the bee, be industrious, work with others and for others, take pride in our vocations, obey the rules of our society, and strive to add to our body of knowledge and understanding. Otherwise, we are simply useless members of society. Now, I wanted to bring back YouTube for a second. For the last 3-4 years, at night when I have some time to kill, I'll usually go down to the basement. I'll watch some videos, typically about beekeeping and learning more. Well, there was a gentleman out in the East Coast that had a very nice teaching style. I kind of enjoyed his teaching style. I was watching him go through his hives, and he's doing some hive inspections that you get in there and work in your hives. And I realized he was wearing a ring. So I looked him up on Facebook, shot him a text and said, "Hey, are you a traveling man?" And he said, "Yes, I am." We got a nice little conversation going. And I told him I was doing the Masonic education for our lodge, and he sent me what he came up with. So Brother Jason Crook from Union Lodge number 5, Middleton, Delaware. I don't want to, I want to make sure he gets full credit for this. He came up with the working tools of a beekeeper, which are very accurate. You have the beehive, which you can see on the left. You've got the hive tool, which is that tool that you see on the right. It's kind of like a smaller size pry bar. That's what you use to lift boxes up, to pull frames out of the hive. And you have the smoker. Now, most of you probably have seen a smoker before, but in the bottom right-hand corner, if you're unfamiliar with what the smokers are, you load those up with, pine needles. You could use anything else, sawdust, whatever, to produce a large amount of smoke. And you will typically blow that smoke, and that smoke, contrary to popular belief, it doesn't calm the bees down. The smoke doesn't calm them down. What the smoke does is cover up other pheromones that the bees will release. So if the colony is under attack, if the colony thinks they're under attack, they will go out and start trying to sting you. If a honeybee stings you, the honeybee dies. The honeybee is not like a hornet or yellow jacket that likes to sting you for the fun of it. If a honeybee will only sting you if they feel like they're threatened or under attack. So what that smoke does, it covers up those pheromones. It covers up those pheromones so that they don't know that there should be take an aggressive stance. Lots of times it may make the bees believe they're on fire. And so a lot of the bees at that point in time will go to their honey stores immediately and start sucking down nectar, which does in fact calm them down. It gives them kind of like a sugar rush. But that's the purpose of the smoker. So if you go into a hive inspection and the bees are overly aggressive, you give them a few shots of smoke, cover up those pheromones, and you know, it may relax them or may force them to take some honey, but the smoke itself doesn't calm them down. So in Freemasonry, the beehive represents all that is proper in society. And again, this goes back to brother Jason Crook here. The beehive represents all that is proper in society and could arguably be the organization's most enduring symbol. Many know what a beehive is, but a bee skep is a symbol that's used in our third degree. The skep is the oldest, truest form of the craft of beekeeping. It's the tool used by beekeepers to contain their bee stock in an early form to transport them to pollinate crops. Its very design is industrious, but it houses a colony of such complexity that unless one knocks on the skep, one can never know the complex work that's being performed within. So these are the tools of a beekeeper: the beehive, the hive tool, and the smoker, and are thus explained. The smoker helps cloud the defense pheromones of the bee to allow the keeper to work with them safely. The hive tool is used to surgically disassemble a hive to inspect it, and the beehive is the place where we keep bees. But as a Masonic beekeeper, we realize these tools are what operative beekeepers use, but we as Masonic beekeepers are taught to look at these tools for more noble and glorious purposes. The smoker clouds the judgment of the bees, teaching us that if we allow the world to cloud our judgment, we will become complacent in our labors to fail to protect our colony and the secrets of masonry. The hive tool, to use the working tools of the craft to help assist in our daily tasks as we inspect life's beehives, and the beehive as that emblem of industry, where we recognize that sweet rewards are not just a necessity for survival, but to build strong colonies. Here's a frame of bees that we had during a hive inspection. That's what frames look like inside those hive boxes. Didn't know if you saw those before or not, but that's what a frame of bees looks like. I've included our contact information if anybody is in the Swayze area or would like to take a look at our YouTube channel. But bees are a fascinating, fascinating creature, and they surely are industrious. And I certainly understand why the Masons of antiquity utilized the bee and the beehive as such important Masonic symbols. So that being said, James, I'll turn it back over to you. If there's any questions, I'll be happy to answer some.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, worshipful brother. And brothers, if you do have questions, you can pop them in the chat. I see Grant K. Smith does have a question. He says, you mentioned undertaker duties. What do bees do with their dead? Do they have a funeral ritual?
To my knowledge, there are no funeral rituals. They just basically toss them out of the hive to keep the hive as clean as they possibly can keep it. So bees are very neat and tidy. If we put something in the hive that shouldn't be there, if it's within their power and ability, they will work collectively to drag that item out of the hive and just toss it out the front door. That's generally what the undertakers will do.
I don't see any more questions yet, but if you do have a question and can unmute in a mannerly order, we'll take questions that way as well. I will say while we're waiting on any potential questions, I really identified strongly with one of the earlier portions of what you said, John. I equated it to the lodge being the group of Masons and the building we meet in, the lodge building, being our temple. But when we talk about a lodge, we're talking about the brothers of the lodge. You know, a lodge is a group
Correct.
of people, not a building. And actually, I think that kind of ties in with Right Worshipful Brother Seipel's talk earlier, where, and you could probably equate this to bees better than I could, but, you know, hives do relocate from time to time. It's not an uncommon thing at all. they do it for various reasons. And the Lodge in the Box program, which I'm sorry, John, you weren't on yet for that, but Brother Seipel talked about how if the climate of your lodge is not ideal, you can essentially meet somewhere else for various reasons. And he's assembled an altar that stores all the things you would need for a lodge. And so I just wanted to make that correlation.
Yeah, that's a very good correlation. Typically, bees will leave the hive for a few different reasons. When they swarm, typically when they swarm, it is because they've grown too large for their hive. So if you think back in 1700s, 1800s, how the lodges continued to grow and continue to expand westward in the United States, because we were growing as a movement. We were growing, and new lodges had to be opened because, well, we had to swarm. We were too large in our hive box, so we had to create new lodges. Sometimes if things are really bad and just not going well at all, bees will abscond. They will simply just take off. And that's not a swarming sensation. That's not because they've grown too large. It's because there's something wrong. And I think maybe that's another example of maybe sometimes we have lodges today that, we have to just close down for whatever reason, or maybe look at a different type of box to go to. I think that's a brilliant idea. One thing I do want to mention, I would be amiss if I didn't mention this: beekeeping in masonry. As a beekeeper, people think, John, you're kind of nuts. Why in the world would you want to go out there and play with those bees? Well, from a personal perspective, I go out and play with the bees because when I'm doing that, nobody's calling me, nobody's texting me, nobody's Teams chatting me, nobody's, it's a stress reliever for me. But one thing I love about beekeeping, just like with Brother Jason Crook we mentioned here a minute ago, beekeeping is very Masonic oriented. To date, I have yet to find a beekeeper that wouldn't take time out of his day to talk to me, to help me, to mentor me, to let me grow in my beekeeping skills and in craft. And same thing in masonry. If we want to grow in masonry, there's always somebody out there willing to work with us. And this is a perfect example of a case in that nature. We want to share our knowledge. We want to share our wisdom. We want to see others grow. We want to grow ourselves. You never know all there is to know about beekeeping. And I don't think you'll ever know all there is to know about masonry.
Well, thank you very much. I did have a question, actually. You showed a slide at the end. I think it was one of Brother Cook's slides, where you had the hives on the left-hand side, and they were all painted different colors. And I seem to recall that wasps and bees and various types of hornets are very visual. Are they color coded so that the individual hives can tell them apart, or is that a wrong guess?
Well, no, not at all. So a lot of beekeepers will paint their hives whatever cheap paint they can get their hands on. But bees see in ultraviolet light, so they see in a different spectrum than we do. Most beekeepers, you go with a standard white because it's just easy for the bees to see. It's easy to maintain. It keeps the hive cooler in the summer, and overheating, especially down south, is a major concern. You would never want to paint your beehives black or a really dark color, but some people will vary boxes with different ultraviolet light schemes, light purple or violet. Bees do like those colors, so you may see a couple supers painted yellow or light blue or violet. That's not uncommon.
Awesome. Okay. Thank you. I don't see any other questions, so we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. Just want to thank everyone who joined and was able to stick through some of our earlier technical problems. I hope you enjoyed it, and we will see you in 3 months, about 3 months for the next one. This is a quarterly event. This was handed off recently to the Dwight L. Smith Lodge of Research to run, and so our next event will be the first one that we've run A to Z. If you have any recommendations for speakers or any other questions, comments, or concerns, you can reach out to me directly at james@ruatravelingman.com. Yes, I bought a website so I could have a Masonic email address, but again, that's james@ruatravelingman.com. If you have any questions or concerns, comments on how tonight went, if you want to give me feedback, I know it must have been frustrating for some of you to have some of the technical problems we had earlier. But if you have recommendations for speakers or themes you might suggest, is there a topic you'd like to hear more about? We did a themed event last time where we kind of had multiple speakers on the George Washington Masonic Memorial and George Washington. So if you wanted to see something like that and had a theme to suggest, I'd love to hear it. Otherwise, if you know Seamus Driver, Dave Hostler, Chris Hodap, or any of the other officers of the Lodge of Research, I'm sure any of us would love to take feedback. And John Bridegroom is one of our sponsors at the Grand Lodge level. I'm sure he'd be able to take feedback and pass it along to us as well.
I don't want no feedback. No, I'm kidding.
Very good. Thank you very much, brothers. I'm seeing a few questions in my personal messages in the chat. So you're all welcome to filter out as you see fit. It may be another minute before I close the meeting though. So thank you very much and have an excellent evening.